Hello, friends and colleagues, and welcome to the Tourism Skillshop, hosted by State of Washington Tourism, SWT. My name is Matthew Ozuna, and I am the Destination Development Manager at SWT. I will introduce today's webinar on best practices for family travel. Please utilize the chat function in Zoom to say hello and let us know where you are zooming in from today. Feel free to share your questions and comments in the chat box during any time in the webinar. You can also utilize the Q&A feature near the end of the webinar. Tamara Rice will be joining us today. Tamara is the Destination Development Coordinator at SWT. Tamara will monitor the chat and help address any questions from the audience near the end of the webinar. Now, folks, in case you don't know, you are in the Tourism Skillshop. The Tourism Skillshop is one of many industry educational programs from State of Washington Tourism. This webinar series will engage with colleagues across the tourism sector and broaden their industry knowledge, skills, and network. Each webinar will highlight a specific issue or skill for tourism professionals to ponder and discuss with industry experts. The State of Washington Tourism will host live webinars of the Tourism Skillshop on the third or fourth Thursday of every month from 10 to 11 a.m. These webinars are free and open to all tourism stakeholders. The webinars will also be recorded and shared with registrants as well as other users on the SWT YouTube channel. For Tourism Skillshop and other industry updates, visit the SWT industry website, sign up for the Industry Update newsletter, and follow SWT on LinkedIn. Tourism stakeholders may also join the SWT Facebook group for further discussion on topics related to the Tourism Skillshop and other industry news, issues, and events. Now, specifically today's webinar will focus on family travel. Best practices for family travel, I should say. Vacations with children continue to be a thriving segment of all travel. According to a 2023 survey by the Family Travel Association, 81% of respondents were deemed very likely to travel in the next 12 months, often in the company of grandparents or friends. Families traveling with children, have a wide range of interests, from national parks and campgrounds to museums, cultural centers, and resorts. And in my experience, resorts with water parks or plenty of pools. In 2023, these folks spent an average of $6,750 per family on things that were fun, educational, and rejuvenating. Tourism stakeholders that place a high value on welcoming families are poised to capture this market segment, which is willing to spend money on memorable experiences rather than tangible objects. However, efforts to attract visitors traveling with kids must be genuine, age-appropriate, and consistent across a spectrum of tour operators, lodging establishments, and attractions. Industry veteran Aaron Kirkland will present best practices for family travel that will encourage repeat visitation. Through comprehensive how-to strategies and real-world case studies, this webinar will provide attendees with a toolkit and timeline for successfully adapting and creating kid-friendly activities, regardless of location, budget, or product. Now, let me tell you a little bit more about Aaron. Aaron is a long-standing advocate for family travel and outdoor adventure, especially when exploring the last frontier. She is the author of 2 guidebooks, Alaska on the Go, Exploring the 49th State with Children, and its sequel, Alaska on the Go, Exploring the Alaska Maritime Highway System with Children. Her website, Alaska on the Go, was the premier resource for visitors, travel trade, and community partners to discover Alaska and create products and services within the tourism sector. Additionally, Aaron wrote a weekly column called Outdoors with Kids for Alaska's statewide newspaper, Anchorage Daily News, and contributed to a wide range of print and digital media publications. Thanks, Aaron, for being here today. And we also have Mandy Garcia. Mandy will be joining the webinar as a panelist after Aaron's presentation today. She will share ways to attract and manage family travel as a small tour operator in Alaska. Mandy is the co-owner of Salmon Berry Travel and Tours, a female-owned enterprise providing daily guided tours in South Central Alaska. Mandy started as a tour guide with Salmon Berry Travel and Tours before advancing into leadership roles involving product development, staff training, and business administration. Since her early days with the company, Salmon Berry Travel and Tours has experienced significant growth. It now employs year-round staff with operating teams in Hatcher Pass, I'm sorry, Mandy,
It's Talkeetna.
Katikna, thank you.
Talkeetna.
I knew I was going to fumble that word. Anchorage and Fairbanks. Ladies, again, thank you for joining us today. I'm excited to dive in to family travel. I have a little nephew of my own, and I'm learning how to travel with him and my aging parents. So I'm looking forward to this webinar today. Okay,
Awesome.
Aaron,
Thanks, Matt.
we'll start off with you. I know you're having some visual difficulties, so you've you've turned off your camera.
Yes.
I will present your slide deck, and we'll just go from there.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm in Washington's Olympic Peninsula, so sometimes connectivity gets a little wonky, so I turned my camera off, but you saw me, and there you go. All right. Thanks, Matt. Let's throw up that family-friendly toolkit for success slide. And thank you, SWT, for inviting me here to share some long-learned insights today. I am very excited to be the Washington side of travel and tourism, so this is great. I've been wrangling kids and parents since 1990 as a camp director, a ski instructor, outdoor educator, field journalist. Also, I am the parent of 2 sons, one of whom is also neurodivergent. So I have seen it all, and I am here today along with Mandy, who I've worked with for years, to share some tools and tips I've learned along the way as they relate to creating or strengthening your product and services within this realm of family travel. So next slide, Matt, if you could. Awesome. So ever since the construction of our interstate highways post-World War II that expanded the connections between regions of the United States, parents have wanted to show their kids unique places and attractions in a way that was enjoyable, educational, but also affordable. And take a look at some of these awesome vintage images of family vacations. That lower right one could totally be us. But as people became more mobile and found additional resources to help make travel something the average family could do. Next slide, Matt, if you could. The idea of a designated family vacation became even more and more attractive. So remember, we're talking about the 1950s and 60s. This is where the concept of the nuclear family came into play. These parents had grown up during the Depression. They had either fought in or helped in some way during World War II. There was a father who worked Monday through Saturday, early to late, and the mother who stayed home and cooked and organized the family budget, key there, and managed the kids and their needs. Parents were adamant that their kids would be experiencing things that they never got to, and vacations thus became part of the formula. Next slide, Matt. So what does family travel look like today? You already heard Matt throw out some nuggets from the Family Travel Association's annual survey. So this is 2023's report. I'm not going to read the entire slide, but you can take a look at it as I talk. But it is worth noting that there's still a very high interest among families to explore the outdoors. COVID is a huge part of that. Everybody realized, because that was really the only thing we could do, that camping on our public lands, exploring them and the related activities within those public lands was accessible and affordable. And everyone all of a sudden realized, wow, this is really great, and we should do more of this. So then that final bullet, talking about the benefits of family travel as the parents have noticed them. So things like adaptability, offering new experiences to their kids, positive outlooks on life, That one also came out as kind of a residual of the COVID pandemic, because that was very, very challenging on all of us, but primarily for our kids. So giving children a way to kind of express themselves through travel and being outdoors was really important to parents. Next slide, Matt. So you're going to learn today that managing young people as part of a viable and successful family travel product or service is all about the plan. I cannot emphasize that enough. And so what makes a plan for welcoming children so darn critical? So you look at that first bullet, you're being proactive. Happy kids mean less stress for you, for your staff, for other travelers who might be along. You're already going to have a strategy in place. You're not going to be making on the fly decisions or grabbing tools out of wherever you can find them, because these things may or may not work during your tour or at your facility or on your service. Contented kids are happy parents and happy kids. I'll say that again. Contented kids mean happy parents and happy kids. Okay. So you're going to be walking your talk also to potential visitors, your industry as a whole, and your staff on site, that you are aware of the unique needs of your younger guests, and you are willing to take this extra step to nurture these young people. And I say all the time, Mandy's heard me say it all the time, that the kids who visit your destination are the kids who potentially will be the steward of your destination. So setting the groundwork with kids now means that they're more likely to come back to your location because they had great memories and experiences there.
Hey, Erin.
So, yeah.
When you say, I'm just curious, this kind of,
Yep.
I'm dealing with this, like I said, just a week ago with my nephew.
Yep.
How rigid should these plans be? Should you also kind of plan for some flexibility with kids and
That's
traveling?
such a good question, Matt. And I'm actually going to get into exactly that.
Okay.
Because nothing with children is rigid, because we would like it to be that, but nothing with children is rigid, and you always have to be willing to pivot. But yes, great question, and I will get into that shortly.
Excellent.
Thank you. So the long-term effects on your business. So satisfied parents or caregivers or grandparents, whoever brings the kids, who are enthusiastic about your destination or experience will, number one, return. They will return, and they will often bring people with them. Number two, they're going to refer your destination or experience to others. And then number three, they're going to positively review those, because because parents trust other parents before they will trust anybody else. And I'm going to show you an example of that a couple slides from now. Parents will always trust what other parents say and where they go, because they understand that if another family had a great experience, then it's more likely that their family's going to have a great experience. And also that very last bullet, you might find that after you do all the trial runs and hard work and research, that you have developed your own unique little niche market there. It's pretty great when you are doing something that nobody else is. And sometimes you just fall into that. I actually fell into that in Alaska. And Mandy will talk a little bit more about their particular niche as well. All right, next slide, Matt. Okay, let's get into the toolbox. These are some practical tools. 5 things you can do as soon as we hang up today. You can start doing a little bit of the work and figuring out whether family travel is going to be something that you are willing to invest in. But as Matt actually mentioned, you'll notice that all the things we're going to talk about, nothing is accomplished quickly, because nothing with children is accomplished quickly. Everything related to family travel needs to be intentional, it needs to be thoughtful, and it needs to be full of adaptations back and forth and sideways sometimes. So keep that in the back of your mind as we're talking about expanding maybe existing products or experiences you have, but also as you're creating new ones. Okay, Matt, next slide. All right, first tool in the toolbox is to do a little taking stock of the assets that you already have. I suggest for all 5 of these tasks, by the way, that you start a physical folder or throw up a whiteboard in your office. Mandy's going to talk a little bit about how their office brainstorms. Brainstorm wildly. Shut no idea down until you have worked through the processes related to that idea. So this is the chance to look at what you've already got, look at what you might be able to do, and then you can start doing some practical steps underneath that. So look at your physical space. Do you actually have extra space on property to build a playground or start a library or store extra gear specifically for kids? Look at materials you already have available. So do you have any materials that kids might enjoy? Do you have a stash of kid-friendly books or coloring sheets or things like that? Do you have product relevance? And by that, I mean, Mandy has some very good stories about this. By that, I mean, does what you do, tour operators, does what you do, is it safe for kids? Is it something that kids are going to enjoy? Is it something that you feel like you can expand into fitting a young person demographic? So let's say you have a hotel on the side of a precipice. Is that going to be something that's going to cost you a lot of money to change out and make safer for young people to be at that hotel? Or is it something you're going to maybe not recommend that parents of infants, toddlers, preschoolers stay there or stay in a certain block of rooms? So thinking ahead to what your relevance is. If you have a tour that I'm talking Alaska here, so that is bear viewing. Is that something that a child and we're going to talk about the different ages and stages of kids. Is that something a child under the age of 15 is going to be able to handle? Is that going to be safe for them? Is it going to be worth it for your staff? Is it going to be any fun for the kid? So start asking those questions about your product relevance. Also looking, of course, at your budget, not just funds, physical funds, but also time. Is this going to take a lot of time that you do not have quite yet? But are you willing to build in some extra time to get family travel experiences off the ground? Sure. And to do that, of course, you're going to need staff. Do you have the time and the energy and the funds to support staff who can support your family travel product? All right, next slide, Matt. So our second tool involves a little more groundwork. In fact, a lot of groundwork. And this is where you're going to spend the bulk of your time before you've decided to create a kid-friendly environment in your product or service. So this is the one that's going to enable you to determine exactly what, where, and how you're appropriately going to serve families. Where you want to start is researching similar cohorts. So familytravel.org is the Family Travel Association website. There are lists and lists and lists of tours, tour operators, hotels, resorts, everything you could probably want to know about a place to take kids. So start searching around in there and find the one that connects the most with what you do and just see what they're doing. See how they welcome kids. Don't be afraid to call them. Don't be afraid to email and do some information searching. So how are they doing it? When are they doing it? Are certain aspects of their tours or their properties similar to what you've got? Also, become familiar with your potential visitors. This is really, really important. Who are these families? Where are they coming from? And what questions are they asking? Will your product or service help them have a better experience? And how is that going to go? So look at these 2 screenshots I took from Friends of Olympic National Park. It's a Facebook group. So I'll tell you right now, parents go to Facebook groups to find information about destinations. They're all over the place. So I lurk around in as many Facebook groups as I possibly can before I go to a destination or here on the Olympic Peninsula. And I see what parents are asking. So the one on the left, my husband and I are looking at taking a trip. We have our kids and we want to find a place that has a separate room for the kids to sleep. So those of you who have lodging, you should be thinking right now, how can we help this mom so she doesn't go to, what can I do? And then the right hand one, parents always, I feel like this is a silly question, but I've never really traveled with my kids alone, and they're 11 and they're always hungry. Hello. We're going to talk about a little more about that too. So what do I do for food? How can I handle that? Those of you who operate a tour, those of you who again have a property at a destination, how can you help this mom? So I will say, go into these Facebook groups, join them, but join them as your personal authentic self, not as the business. Number one, they probably won't let you in anyway. But number two, that's how you're going to learn what people want and the needs that you might be able to meet. Plus, they're also really fun. You get to know what the themes are about a destination. So these are the things that parents want to know. Also, finally, you want to know the pertinent laws and regulations. These are huge. So the biggie, if you're a tour operator, car seats. Mandy's going to talk a lot about car seats in her segment. But also, if you take kids out for an adventure with no parent or guardian along, what kind of legalities does that present to you? Okay. So does that make you a child care provider in the eyes of the state? Whoops, that's a little bit bigger segment of this you want to maybe not take on right from the get-go. So just do a little research once you know what kind of product or service you want to be providing parents, and then you can start working out what the legalities of that are. Okay, Matt, next slide. All right, let's talk a little bit before we get to the last three, a quick primer about the kids themselves, because enormous role in determining what product you're going to provide, how you're going to serve these families, and in some cases determine if you can serve a certain age group or not. You can take a look at this while I'm just throwing out in a nutshell. So the littles, the infants, toddlers, and preschoolers, you must build in time for basic needs. Hungry, tired, tantrum, they need to use the bathroom, things like, or there's cool rocks in the parking lot. So the 3-mile hike you planned may be 150 yards because you're only as quick as your youngest child. I kid you not, I was leading a trip and we got 150 yards because the rocks in the parking lot were apparently the best. But you need to be okay with that. School agers, so those school agers, these are the doers. They are the ones who are going to be the most enthusiastic about what you're doing for the day once you connect with them. These are kind of the sweet spot with family travel because these kids are up for just about anything. And they love to tell you that they learned this in school. So throw out the questions and you'd be surprised what kind of answers you're going to get. And then finally, our teens and our tweens. So age 10, 12, all the way up to 17, 18. These kids, I love to offer them increasing independence. This is the time to let them try to take some risks. So bouldering, zip lining, all of that kind of stuff, you better believe that they are just itching for someone to tell them that they can go ahead and do that. Okay, Matt?
Yes, I like that, risk and freedom. And enough risk and freedom for them to share and tell their friends on social media. I'm sure we'll get to that aspect as well.
Yep. All right. All right, so let's talk about your starting point. Mandy's going to talk in a bit of greater detail about the elements behind some of these questions on this slide and what worked for them and what didn't. But here's some considerations for where to begin. So passive or active additions or changes, the next couple slides are going to talk about that. But then also, are you going to make these changes or adaptations in multiple locations if you are lucky enough to have multiple locations, or are you going to start with just one beta test in one location? I highly recommend you do that, by the way, instead of throwing it out to multiple locations that you possibly can't provide any oversight. And what kind of, excuse me, monetary spend can you make now? And then thinking ahead, what are you willing to invest in later for the growth of this product or service? So you should always be thinking of not just this season or this year, but next year, after 5 years down the line. Okay, Matt, can you switch? All right, so the passive adaptations. So these are things that don't need a ton of attention or money to do, other than making sure they're consistently clean, they're organized, and they're age appropriate. So I highly recommend starting here if you've just begun thinking about ways to be more kid friendly. So you've got your activity books, you got journals, all kinds of things that kids can just kind of grab and go. This is from Fort Flagler in Washington State Park over here near Port Townsend. I was just there last weekend and found this cool scavenger hunt and bug out, go identify bugs activity kids do. It's also layout. So if you have a property, a hotel or cabins or things like that, do you have kid-friendly cozy spaces? Do you have flannel sheets? Do you have things that are just going to make kids a lot more comfortable in this space that they're in that's not their own bed? And of course, dining choices. I highly advocate if you have a restaurant, having a kid menu, chicken nuggets, all of those things that kids are going to eat because kids love the familiar. And as much as parents, we would love our kids to be more bold in the realm of food. Sometimes it's just not going to happen. And if we're going back to those ages and stages, if your kids are hungry, if your kids did not have a good night's sleep, the rest of your trip is not going to go well. And for you as a tour operator, you're going to get the residual of that sometimes. So think about that. And the parents love these passive adaptations because there's something that they can make the choice. Kids can make the choice to do or not do as far as kid packs and things like that. But it also shows that you in the tourism industry is thinking about their kids. So it goes back to that thoughtful and intentional thing. It may seem small to you, but it means so much to us. If you walk into a hotel room and the lights are low and there's cozy spaces and maybe the stuffed animal in there the kids can play with, it's like, okay, they get it. They knew we were coming. All right, next slide. All right, active adaptations. So these are elements that do need a much higher degree of management and oversight. So things like training for your staff, investing in gear that fits kids. The slide you see here, this is a family that was on an uncruise where I led kid trips, and you can see that this PFD is for her size and weight. So are you going to have to buy new gear? It might cost a lot, but you're investing in kids experiencing what you've got to offer. This also means you need to look at human resources, you need to look at legal, you need to look insurance. Sometimes you need to create a whole new itinerary or agenda for a day, and that takes time. And then you need a very unique marketing and messaging strategy. And by this, I mean, you need to create an amazing campaign that's going to bring families to you, that's going to hook them and bring them and keep them. Then you need to share clear and concise information for parents about what will happen, what will not happen, and how you're going to keep their kids safe. So if people want more on this particular topic, I am happy to talk about this. We've got my email in the chat, but this is something that, and I think Mandy will agree, is absolutely critical. The onus is on you as the business to share the information parents need to know in everything that you do. Okay. Okay, Matt, next slide. All right, number 4, identify your on-site champions. It's going to be really helpful from the get-go if you've got a foundation of support and resources from within your business. So you may have this great idea, but if everybody else is not on board, it's not going to work. Everyone has to buy into this. So do you have employees currently on your staff with a background or interest in working with kids? Sometimes staff will jump in and say, hey, what about this? And I love working with kids. However, and this is a big however, do not assume that staff who are parents or staff who are educators are going to want to pick this up. If this is their summer gig working for you, do not assume that a teacher who spends the rest of the year working with kids wants to do that in the summer. And my first time I told this to Matt, he's like, really? Like, yes, really. Sometimes they don't. So don't assume that your staff are going to want to do this. Ask them and get their ideas, but don't assume. And I don't know if Dan Blanchard from Uncruise Adventures is in the webinar today, but Dan is the CEO of Uncruise based in Seattle. And he really was a great example of owners, management, board of directors, seeing the value of expanding products for kids. And he really did a great job of projecting that enthusiasm to his leadership team and that trickled down to the guides and the hotel staff on board. So big kudos to you, Dan, if you're in here. And again, being proactive, communicate when you are hiring staff. So communicate on all hiring materials, in interviews, in discussions with current staff, what the expectations are going to be. So if you have a brand new tourism product that is going to be serving families with children, be very, very real, be as really real as you've ever been with your staff when you're crafting the expectations and even your job announcement when you're hiring, because you don't want to invest a lot of money in a new employee who didn't get the employment experience they thought they were going to have. So, and I think Mandy has some talks about that too. All right, Matt, next one. All right. And the final tool in the toolbox, consider your potential partners. If you don't have the resources right now to create something using those active adaptations, consider partnering with another business or entity for some special activities centered around youngsters. And this is great because it doesn't have to be the entire tour centered around kids. You could take one element and bring in somebody who has a connection with young people and is willing to partner with you. So this doesn't even need to be tourism or hospitality related either. I've seen hotels that have brought in the local library for a regular story hour during peak family times, like weekends, Friday through Monday. They brought in musicians for kids. Bird TLC in Alaska does a great job of bringing birds and doing presentation with live birds, and everybody enjoys that. So your community where you are is an amazing resource, and 9 times out of 10, they would love to partner with you. And it also is a great way to nurture an excellent relationship with the city or community area that you are. So don't discount your local community resources. And then as you'll see in this slide, partnering with your local land managers. So that's federal, state, local, for ranger walks and talk kind of activities or junior ranger kind of projects. The National Park Service, of course, does an excellent job with their junior ranger program. This is a picture from an uncruise adventure in Glacier Bay National Park. And they took the kids pretty much for the whole day, and we did junior ranger activities. And then don't be afraid to join forces with another tour outfit that offers a kid-pleasing element of what you do and what they do. So things like biking. If you don't want to invest in bikes right now and you know there's a bike rental outfit that does have kid-sized bikes, including trailers or tag-alongs, canoeing or kid-friendly food tours are super fun. So don't be afraid to reach out and think outside the box a little bit when you're talking about who your potential partners could be. Okay, Matt, next slide. All right, so to wind up, keep in mind, we all have big ideas. I have a lot of big ideas, and sometimes that gets me in trouble. So Starting small is my mantra. So start small, simple, and thoughtful. Ask for feedback. And I'm talking about feedback from your staff, feedback from your guests in general, feedback from the kids. Bring the kids in, see what they think. They'll tell you. And feedback from parents. Think simply, act genuinely. Kids can spot a faker a mile away. So come up with a simple activity, plug it, like it, do it along with the kids, and they'll buy into it. Don't think, folks, that you need to get the latest techie gadget to have kids buy into what you're doing. Start simple. And then be ready to review on a basis, and for sure at the end of the season, audit what you've done, adapt and change as you go. Sometimes as kids give you feedback, you're going to realize that what you thought was an awesome idea or activity, and the kids are going to be like, no, I think we're going to do it this way. Roll with it, go with it, let the kid be the leader there. And then you're going to know for next time. And then, of course, always have safety as priority one, especially with those tours that have an element of risk with them. Pay attention to the details, insurance, liabilities. Know your car seat law, Washington. Please, please, please know your car seat law. And have a plan for communicating this policy. Mandy has a great policy that they have invested in at Salmonberry Tours. And then again, invest for success. This is not going to happen overnight. This is going to require some time and money, but in the long run, you are going to be known as the business that caters to families, and families are going to come back. They are going to love, love, love on you, and that's what we want. Okay, next slide, Matt. All right, so here's some resources. I mentioned the car seat safety program. I wish Alaska's was as good as. So if you drive kids around and you are concerned about car seats, there's the link for you. If funding is an issue, definitely take a look at the Washington State Office of Public Instruction's Outdoors for All. So there are grants and resources available there for just about everything. It's fantastic. And then if you are interested in joining the Family Travel Association or learning a little bit more about them, you can visit familytravel.org/membership standards. And there's a whole listing of what the criteria is for a business to really be able to say that we serve families and kids. And then that final last slide, Matt. Boop. All right, just to leave you with this, traveling in the company of those we love is home in motion. It really, really is. Kids want to feel welcomed. They want to feel that they have a place and a voice, and they want to be comfortable. And so just keep this in mind as you are adapting your family travel and kid-friendly products and services. And that is it for me.
Thanks, Erin. Right on time. Good job. And now we'll turn things over to Mandy. And folks, just a reminder, if you have any questions so far in the webinar, you can go ahead and pop those in the chat. We'll get those ready for Mandy and Erin at the end of the webinar. So Mandy, let's turn things over to you. Before we dive into your presentation, just tell us a little bit more about yourself. How did you end up in Alaska and the tourism industry?
Okay, hi everybody. My name is Mandy Garcia. I am co-owner of Salmonberry Tours. Personally, I am a fine import of this state. I am originally from the Midwest, so you're going to hear that in my speech today. And you'll find a lot of folks from the Midwest up here in the Pacific West. So it's quite a hospitable place up in Alaska. I studied business, specifically like logistics, supply chain management. And I also studied geology. So I came to Alaska looking for glaciers, and I ended up finding, my partner in crime, which is Candace, my best friend. She founded Salmonberry Tours in 2005. So we have been providing tours and itinerary planning services for the past 19 years. We have really focused on family travel, I'd say in the past 12 to 13 years.
Okay.
Really 12 years, if I had to be honest. And really it did become organic. So we just started happening to, we're creating our own families. Candace has a family of 3 kids. She's got 2 twins and an older little girl. I have 2 mini adventurers, and we share one company, one child, a very large child, called Salmonberry Tours. And so we have a team of year-round experts in Alaska travel. So we wear a couple different hats here in Alaska. We've got the tour guiding hat. So I'll speak today about tour guiding. I started as a tour guide at Salmonberry Tours. So I'm very familiar with that guiding hat. And then we also organically grew into itinerary planning, creating or linking those day tours together, partnering with other local Alaska-owned businesses and other women-owned businesses in Alaska to create a real nice, seamless quality tour when they come up to Alaska. And then that third hat, and I'll touch upon it a little bit today. Candace is the owner of Copper Whale Inn, which is a boutique downtown inn in downtown Anchorage. And so we have been able to really control that guest experience, especially with families, by having these 3 pillars in place. And that's me in a nutshell. Matt.
Excellent. Thanks, Mandy. Well, yeah, you started to answer 2 of my questions already. And just for a time check, folks, we'll give Mandy about 10 minutes, and that will leave about 5 minutes with Q&A for the audience. So I'm the clock keeper. But Mandy, so you talked about you started focusing on younger visitors, customers about 12 years ago, and you did it kind of organically. It just happened naturally. So what were the problems and solutions that you started to kind of toy with in your business with family travelers and younger visitors? What adaptations did you play around with first?
Yeah, so first we met Erin, and I can't remember if we were friends first or she consulted with us first, but she was like, you really need to pay attention to family travel. And we own a small group tours. So it's private or small group. And that really is fantastic for family travel because it gives them an opportunity to have a private guide. And I'll touch upon that in a little bit. But that organic growth came, we became moms, we became way more familiar with like the do's and don'ts of family travel, just becoming parents ourselves, and then having that consultation with Erin, which really broke down all the different age groups. And that helped us define which tours were going to be successful in, allowing the children to come on essentially, and which tours these kids are just not going to be interested in.
Yeah.
I would say that, for us, the first attempt at family travel was really quite basic. So it's having color sheets and color crayons. And now we've designed these kid packs. So fast forward 10 years and we have these duffels. They're technically like those little 25-pound duffels, which obviously we're not going to put 25 pounds of stuff in, but they're all labeled. So we've got the adventure kid packs, all aged based on Erin's age, information that you saw on the other slide. If you didn't take a picture, you need to email her because she's got a wealth of information on like what those different age groups really are tuned into. We've got age appropriate activities. We quickly realized we needed to have like a hard surface for them to, do their color pages on. It's these little tiny simple things that sure in the beginning it's a little bit of an investment, but at the end of the day, you want the other guests on tour, you want your guide to have a seamless experience, and honestly, you really want to connect with these kiddos because they're going to make the trip fun. The snacks are so big. Erin touched upon that a little bit, but if you don't have a good snack game, those kids are going to call you out. So number one, stay away from popcorn. Your guides will love you and appreciate you for that. and stay away from like what are the little Cheerios that just gets all over the van.
Yeah.
So think about the snacks in terms of like, how am I going to clean this up? And also which snacks are the kids really going to enjoy? Make sure you know what their dietary restrictions are. If I had a kid with a peanut allergy, I'm going to make sure that there's no peanut items in that snack bag. So you might notice we've got little ribbons that are tied onto not only the bag on the first picture, but the third picture, those snack bags are pre-made with the same colored ribbon. Because as those bags come out, you also need a plan for when they return. So one of the things that we did, fairly recently, unfortunately, was as you start to get lots of kids, you need to have a plan for, who's going to clean the car seat or wipe it down. When are you going to do that? Whose job is that? Who's going to restock the kid packs so they're ready for the next morning? So those are just some tips for you. And as far as like other adaptations that we did, I would say, starting slow was a really key
Good point.
For us here. And Aaron like nailed it. You've got to start and look at all the different places that your guests, your adult guests, what are the same touch points that those kids are going to have? Because in the event that the family comes in to your guest lounge, are there books in the guest lounge? Like we actually have found a couple years ago a tour guide Barbie. So we have tour guide Barbie in our guest lounge. She's so cool. Even adults love her. But all the different places that the kids would be affected or touch is what you want to address. And if you take a look at all those assets, you can really start narrowing down, what can I do today? What's in my like maybe next year plan, and come together as a group to figure that out.
Excellent. Okay, so you mentioned guides, itineraries. How did you start to train your staff to work better with families as a whole, or more specifically with children?
So first and foremost, we figured out that we needed a guideline for sales. So we created an 8 and 8 rule. So if you are 8 years old or over, you can be on an 8-hour tour or longer. And Alaska is large. So our driving distances, it's very common for us to have over 8-hour tours. And so take a look at your product and see if you need to have some sort of like guideline like that. The 8 and 8 rule, if you're under 8 years old, you really are not going to be able to handle an 8-hour tour. And that was the first thing that helped not only the sales team have a guideline, but it also allowed the guides to have a guideline. And also then we knew that if it was a longer day tour, these are the kids' adaptations or the kids that you're going to experience, right? You're going to experience the 8 to 12-year-old kids and on this particular tour. One of them would be, our glacier walk. Let's take a quick step into the legalities of it and remember that, when we purchased glacier insurance or insurance to be on a glacier, we had to tell the insurance company what's your minimum age. So take a look at your insurance policy, make sure you didn't list an age on there, or if you did list an age, what is that and does it need to be changed? So our age minimum for the glacier walk is 8 years old. And communicating that to the travelers when we're building guest itineraries, making sure that, we've got a biannual training here at Salmonberry. It's a whole team training. We all come together twice a year. One of the activities that we do is we take an entire day with the sales team, and we're talking about kid-friendly, family-friendly, multi-generational friendly itineraries, how to price them out, what's the best room configurations, or like how do you communicate that with the travelers? What are the best itineraries? We critique each other's itineraries. And we kind of develop our own escorted itineraries from that. So now we started with, unfortunately, we were like, hey, right out of the gate, we're going to open up a family-friendly tour. Fail. Did not work. You need start slow. Now we have a family-friendly itinerary and it's great. It's an Iditarod trip. We really take, into account drive times. You need to take into account rest times. If you're aurora viewing, how is a 7-year-old, 8-year-old going to go aurora viewing? You need to have answers for that, and then be able to train the people and train the guests, because they've never been aurora viewing in Alaska. They've never had their child, stay up till midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. How do you do that on tour? So all those little pieces we do in an annual training. We also have a monthly think and drink where the whole team, everybody's invited. Some people can make it, some people can't. So it's an informal meeting. We call it think and drink, and we come up with different ideas. No idea is a bad idea. That's exactly right, Erin. And we work through the different things that are going on. Maybe we have partners that, this is not kid friendly, and we just need to shift or train them. So sometimes it's about coming together and being like, oh, you know what, this particular family, they weren't as prepared as we want that. Okay, well, let's dive into why they weren't prepared. Was it the reseller? Maybe there was a travel advisor involved, and we need to go back to that travel advisor and do extra training. So you're not just training your guides, you're not just, doing, training your traveler to travel in Alaska with a family, but you're also training the resellers of your product.
That's a good point, Mandy. I think you've hit a few very important points. Training is super important, but also kind of visitor education, proper communication, and managing expectations. We're going to go out and view the Northern Lights in the middle of the night. How long does my kid have to stay up? Or what happens if it's cloudy? What do we do then? How do we pivot? How do we kind of come up with new things to do? And just kind of letting your visitors know and your kids know, I think, is really important. So you mentioned a tour that failed. Were there any other challenges or failures or mistakes that you've learned from over the last 12 years as it relates to kids or family travel?
Yeah, definitely. I'd say starting too fast really hurt us. So when we started too fast, we didn't have the infrastructure to back that up. So one of the things that we quickly realized is, like, in our reservation software, you need to be able to quickly see, is this age appropriate? So set those age parameters. Secondly, if it is an age appropriate tour, you have a child price. Like, number one, get a child price, get some car seats, right? All the different types of car seats. And furthermore, if you do have children, you're going to put the child's age down on your manifest, and then you need their age. And that's going to help you. Age and weight will help you determine what the correct legal car seat is. At least it is in Alaska. And so then you train your employees that, like, these are the different car seats. So, I told you we've been doing this for 12 years. This year, even, like, it's every year there is something. And this year the car seats are the thing, right? So we have a diverse group of people. Some of them, they're not even aunties and uncles. So we need to educate them and have a system in place so they can easily do their job. Because what you want is your guides to be able to have a really great experience so they can share that great experience with the travelers. If they're freaked out because, oh my gosh, which kind of car seat am I supposed to pick up today? They're not thinking about, hey, I saw that high tide was coming in, so maybe we'll see a boar tide. I want them to be able to think about that, the latter. I don't want them to have to stress about a child on tour. So in the management role, our goal is to make it communicate with the travelers, make sure that we're clear, have those parameters, but also make those guides' lives a lot easier, because your guides are best when they don't have that stress.
Well said, Mandy. Okay, folks, we are coming to the end of the hour. Erin, why don't we bring you back in? And Tamara, are there any questions in the chat? I don't think I saw any pop up, but I could be wrong. I have a few of my own.
Ooh.
Hi, Matt. I don't see any questions in the chat right now.
Okay, folks, we have a few more minutes left. So if you have any questions, please feel free to add those to the chat. There's a small group today, so we can even unmute you if you actually wanted to have a conversation with Mandy or Erin. That's an option too. Aaron, let's go back to your plan slide. It's important to have a plan, but to have some flexibility built into the plan in case something comes up, bad weather, kids not having a good day, something like that. What other advice? I mean, how rigid, how flexible should these plans be? And Mandy, I mean, what do you tell your guides? Do you kind of take that into your training about flexibility when it comes to plans and families and children?
Yeah, definitely. We do. One of the first pieces that we thought was like, oh, we need to drop the price down because these families, you have to buy 4 tickets or 5 tickets versus just 2 tickets. What we quickly realized is these families will pay for the experience. And so providing them like a private buyout and encouraging them to have a private guide and, showing them the value add and why they would want that private guide was a great benefit because at the end of the day, the mom wants the picture. Like that's the tour guide's goal. And that's what we train the tour guides is like, get the mom the picture. She wants to be in the picture.
Well
So,
said.
and then
Um,
taking those moments, like Aaron will probably talk about like taking those moments, making sure that you're not just like driving, 3 hours to Talkeetna and rushing to something. So
Yes, exactly. Actually, what Mandy said makes total sense, and that's how I really try to encourage businesses to roll. Is that I mentioned you're as fast as your youngest child, and that's just kind of the mindset that you need to have. And remember that families want to have a great time, but they also know their kids and know how their kids operate. So communicating with the parents, particularly if they identify to you that, hey, my kid has challenges with transitions, or my kid just simply has to, be well fed, or the day is going to go to heck. So communicating with the parents ahead of time is really critical if you can at all do that. But yeah, you just have to get the mindset that nothing is set in stone, and be okay with that.
Well put. Folks, we have 1 or 2 more minutes left. Actually, I talked to Mandy and Aaron. They can stick on a little after 11 if we need it. It looks like Lisa had a question, and Aaron, you replied to Lisa. I have one more story to tell, and it's kind of an antidote. I mean, it was and it's kind of what I see with my own nephew. And I guess I used to be a camp counselor and used to take kids on hikes and things like that. Experiential learning, experiences, hands-on learning experiences that kids really can kind of take some risk and have some freedom to fail or to learn new things. I'm reading Kitchen Confidential by Anthony Bourdain, and in his trip to France, his first trip to France, he was a pain. He hated it. He was eating the same American food. And it wasn't until an experience with a family friend out collecting oysters when he was kind of dared by this old Frenchman to taste an oyster fresh out of the sea, that his life changed and he fell in love with travel. And it had to do with courage, and it had to do with something new, and it was hands-on, and it just changed his entire experience for travel. Does something like that, especially for the older kids or younger kids, like, you talked about passive and active exercises with kids, Aaron and Mandy, like, how does that, are there any other good stories you can tell or examples you can provide for our audience today about hands-on learning experiences for kids that really kind of, get them engaged in whatever kind of tour or tourism experience they have?
Yeah, and gosh, now that video I sent you from Uncruise actually would be perfect to show right about now. So the value in an experience for kids lies in the kids' ability to touch, taste, hear, smell. And I mentioned earlier that you do not need to get the highest tech gadget for young people to be impacted. In fact, I encourage that you don't, because so much of what kids are doing right now is very tech oriented. They've forgotten what the simple sensory experiences are like when they're traveling. So walking on a beach and giving them the parameter, safety parameter, and saying, just have at it and show me what you find. And seeing what they can do. Kids will surprise you every single time, and offering them that kind of experience over one that is that feels too much like school. Also, it's a fine line we walk, right? And as a camp counselor, but giving them the freedom to explore and be curious and know that they can come to you with questions is key. Absolutely key. And you can do that it's not just the outdoors. You can do that in a museum or cultural center. You can do that in your own hotel property. Offering them the opportunity to explore and be curious is going to have a very high impact. And let me say one more thing. I would get asked all the time, like, why would you bring a little kid to Alaska? They're not going to remember it. If you go back to the slide where we talked about ages and stages, the very youngest of children everything to them is a sensory experience. They are taking it all in. And while they may not be able to articulate back to you what they saw or heard or felt, they are absolutely going to be impacted by that. Absolutely. Do not ever let anyone be limited by age or ability.
Well
And
said.
for
Mandy,
us,
any last parting words?
for us, it was embracing this unplugged vacation mindset. So there are, there's many places in Alaska that are unplugged just due to Alaska. So instead of that being a negative, we kind of spun it as a positive. And this skip generation, the grandparents, with the grandchildren love, just get two days unplugged. They love it. Go back to basics, board games.
Nice. Simple. Easy. All right, ladies, thank you so much. I've had a great time on this webinar. I hope the rest of our audience did as well. And folks, stay tuned next month while we focus on dark sky tourism. Talk to you again soon. Take care.